Welcome, dear listener, to another evening in the brownstone on West 35th Street. Pull up a chair, pour yourself a glass of something smooth, and let the shadows of intrigue wrap around you. Tonight, we delve into a tale of deception, desire, and death. Nero Wolfe, slain heiress of Casablanca Port. I'm Archie Goodwin, your guide through the labyrinth. Relax, speculate along with me, and remember, the devil's in the details. Chapter 1. The Orchid Room Summons. It was a sweltering July evening in 1947, the kind of New York heat that turns asphalt into a skillet and tempers into tinder. The city pulsed outside our brownstone, horns blaring, street vendors hawking, and the occasional siren cutting through the haze like a knife. Inside, however, was another world, one of cool order, where Fritz Brenner's culinary genius perfumed the air with roasted lamb and rosemary, and Nero Wolfe, my employer and the greatest detective this side of the Atlantic, presided like a sultan in his domain. I, Archie Goodwin, had just loosened my tie and was savoring a final bite of Fritz's lemon tart when the doorbell chimed, sharp and insistent, like a summons to judgment. Wolfe was upstairs in his plant rooms, communing with his orchids. 10,000 of them, tended with a devotion most men reserve for lovers or gods. It was his sacred hour, 4 to 6 p.m., and heaven help the fool who interrupted. But the doorbell was my jurisdiction. So I wiped my mouth, adjusted my grin, and strode to the front hall. Through the one-way glass panel, I glimpsed a silhouette that promised trouble. A woman, tall and poised, her hat tilted just so, like a femme fatale in a Bogart flick. I opened the door, and there she stood. Elena Moreau, heiress to the Casablanca Port shipping empire, a fortune built on trade routes that spanned the Mediterranean and beyond. Her family had fled Morocco during the clad in a yellow silk shirt and a brown suit that could have funded a small nation. His massive frame settled into the custom-built chair behind his desk, the only seat in New York built to withstand him. He steepled his fingers, his eyes narrowing as he regarded Elena like a rare orchid specimen. Beautiful, but possibly poisonous. "Madam," he rumbled, his voice a baritone that could soothe or intimidate. "State your case. Brevity is appreciated, as is clarity." He glanced at the clock, a not-so-subtle hint that her intrusion had already cost him 10 minutes with his Cattleya hybrids. Elena leaned forward, her pearls clicking softly. "Mr. Wolfe, I am being hunted." The word hunted hung in the air, sharp and primal. She explained. Her father, Henri Moreau, had built Casablanca Port into a titan of shipping, handling everything from spices to silks before the war. But during the Nazi occupation of France, rumors swirled that he'd dealt with Vichy collaborators, perhaps smuggling artifacts or even gold to secure his family's escape. Henri died 2 years ago, leaving Elena the sole heir. Now, anonymous letters had arrived, typed, postmarked from Brooklyn, threatening to expose those wartime secrets unless she paid a fortune. Worse, the letters hinted at violence, with phrases like, "The port's curse will claim you," and "Blood pays for blood." She'd found a Moroccan dirk, its blade etched with Berber symbols, slipped under her apartment door last week. "I fear I'll be next," she whispered, her composure cracking just enough to reveal raw fear. Wolfe's eyes flickered with interest, though his face remained as impassive as a Buddha statue. "These letters," he said. "You have them?" She produced 3, crisp and menacing, from a velvet clutch. I glanced over them as Wolfe read, noting the typewriter's uneven E and the cheap paper. Clues, perhaps, but maddeningly vague. "And your family's enemies?" Wolfe pressed. "Who profits from your demise?" Elena hesitated, her fingers twisting a pearl. "My cousin, Raoul Duval." "Man, who's behind this, Mr. Wolfe?" she said. "Before they find me." I escorted her out, catching a whiff of her perfume. Jasmine, with a hint of something sharper, like danger. As the door closed, I turned to Wolfe, who was already sipping a beer Fritz had brought. "Well, boss, smells like a case with more layers than Fritz's milfoy. Where do we start?" "Archie," he said, his tone laced with irritation at my metaphor. "Begin with the letters. Typewriter analysis, postmark origins, then the port records, wartime shipments, particularly from Casablanca. Secrets that kill are seldom small." He waved a hand, dismissing me to my typewriter while he retreated to his orchids, no doubt plotting moves like a chess grandmaster. I sat at my desk, the office now quiet save for the hum of the city beyond. Elena's story nagged at me, not just the threats, but the way her eyes darted, as if she knew more than she'd told. Was she a victim, or was she playing a deeper game? And those suspects, Raoul, Victor, Silas, each seemed to have a knife sharpened for her back. I typed up notes, my fingers itching to hit the streets and dig. The body in the harbor. The dawn broke over New York like a bruise, gray and heavy, the kind of morning that promises trouble before the first cup of coffee. I, Archie Goodwin, was still digesting Fritz Brenner's bacon and eggs when the phone jangled like a fire alarm. It was Inspector Kramer of Homicide, his voice a gravelly snarl through the receiver. "Goodwin, get your boss down to the East River docks, Pier 17. We've got a body. Elena Moreau, stabbed. And tell Wolfe to move his mountain of a self before I lose my temper." I relayed the news to Nero Wolfe, who was ensconced in his office chair, a bottle of beer sweating in his hand despite the early hour. His scowl could have curdled milk. "Pfui," he muttered, setting the bottle down with a thud. "The docks, in this heat, intolerable." But murder was one of necklace snarled like seaweed around her throat. A Moroccan dirk, its blade etched with the same Berber symbols she'd described, was clutched in her stiff hand, the hilt glinting dully. The wound, a clean stab to the chest, spoke of precision, not passion. Nearby, a crumpled note lay half-soaked in a puddle, its ink blurred but legible. The port's curse claims its due. Footprints, men's size 10, led from the body to a warehouse marked Duval Imports, property of Elena's cousin, Raoul Duval, pronunciation Raoul Duval. "Convenient," I said, squinting at the footprints. "Too convenient, maybe." Wolfe merely grunted, his eyes scanning the scene like a hawk's. He pointed to a smudge of red clay on the pier, not native to the concrete jungle of New York. "Archie, note that clay, and the note. Photograph it before it disintegrates." Kramer filled us in. A dock worker spotted the body at dawn, no witnesses to the killing. Elena's purse held a key to her apartment and a receipt for a late-night diner, time-stamped 11:47 p.m., hours after she'd left our brownstone. "She was alive at midnight," I said. "Gives us a window." Kramer snorted. "Yeah, and a dozen suspects. Start with Raoul Duval. His warehouse, his footprints. We tracked Raoul to a smoky office above the warehouse, where he sat polishing a cigarette case, his mustache twitching like a villain in a melodrama. He was slick, all right. Tailored suit, oiled hair, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Gentlemen," he drawled, his French accent thicker than Elena's. "A tragedy, no? But I was at a poker game in Brooklyn till 3 a.m. Ask my men. They'll vouch for me." His men were a pair of shifty dockhands, their alibis as solid as river mist. I pressed him. "You and Elena get along?" Raoul shrugged. "She was difficult. Wanted to sell the port holdings. I disagreed. Family business, you understand." His eyes flicked to the dirk when I mentioned it, a crack in his polish. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe sank into his chair. A ritzy penthouse on the Upper East Side was a study in elegance. Silk drapes, Moroccan rugs, and a locked desk I cracked with a paperclip. Inside I found a ledger detailing port shipments from 1943. Crates labeled art supplies, but heavy enough for gold or relics. A letter, unsigned, hinted at blackmail. Expose the Vichy deals and the Moreau name sinks. The handwriting didn't match the dockside note, but the thread echoed. I also found a photo of Elena with Victor Lang, pronunciation Lang, her fiancé. His arm around her, his face tight with something like anger. Victor, a war veteran with a limp and a chip on his shoulder, was next on my list. I caught him at a veterans club, nursing a whiskey. He was lean, scarred, with eyes that had seen too much. "Elena was everything," he said, voice rough. "But her family's money. Dirty, from the war. We fought about it last night." She stormed off. His limp seemed real, but his story had holes. He claimed to be home by 10 p.m., yet neighbors saw him out past midnight. "You own a dirk, Victor?" I asked. He paled. "No. That's her family's junk. Another crack, another suspect." Back home, Wolfe was in his yellow pajamas, a tray of Fritz's shrimp creole before him. I laid out the haul. Diner sighting, veiled woman, ledger, blackmail letter, Victor's shaky alibi. He chewed slowly, thinking. "The clay," he said. "Trace its origin. Quarries, perhaps upstate. And the veiled woman. Find her. She's no phantom." He leaned back, eyes half closed. "This murder is not passion, Archie. It's calculation. The dirk is a misdirection, the note a script. Someone wants us chasing ghosts." I hit the phone, calling Saul Panzer, our best operative, to track the clay. Then I remembered a dock worker's offhand remark. A shipment of art supplies arriving tomorrow, booked under Duval scent of burnt coffee and yesterday's grease. Eddie, the night clerk, was wiping down the counter, his eyes darting like a man who'd seen too many cops. "The veiled lady?" he said, scratching his stubble. "Yeah, she was outside, maybe 11:30 p.m. Looked foreign. Dark eyes, scarf over her face, like something out of Casablanca. Didn't come in. Just watched Elena through the window." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "Heard her mutter something in French. Sounded angry." A lead, thin but sharp. I pressed him for more, but he clammed up, claiming a customer needed him. I slipped him a fin and got a name. The veiled woman had been seen at a dive bar, the Rusty Anchor. a haunt for dock workers and drifters. The rusty anchor was a hole in the wall near Pier 17, its windows grimy, its air a mix of whiskey and despair. The bartender, a grizzled ex-sailor named Mac, knew everyone who passed through. "Veiled woman?" he grunted, polishing a glass. "Yeah, she was here last week, asking about Moreau shipments. Called herself Nadia, didn't catch a last name." He pointed me to a boarding house in Hell's Kitchen where she'd been spotted. I jotted it down, feeling the net tighten. Nadia. Who was she? A scorned relative, a wartime ghost, or a hired distraction? Next, I hit Elena's penthouse again, this time with Saul Panzer, our ace operative, in tow. The place was still a shrine to wealth. Moroccan rugs, crystal chandeliers, and that locked desk I'd cracked yesterday. Saul, with his knack for finding what others miss, spotted a hidden panel in the desk's drawer. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with Elena's elegant script. She wrote of her father's wartime deals, shipments of art supplies that masked crates of gold ingots funneled through Casablanca to Vichy collaborators. Elena had planned to expose it, donating the fortune to war orphans. "Raoul will fight me." Bricks sailed past my head, shattering on the pavement. A warning, or a clumsy attempt to stop me? I didn't stick around to ask. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was in his office, a tray of Fritz's duck à l'orange before him, the aroma almost distracting me from the case. I laid out the haul. Eddie's veiled woman, Nadia Khalil's name, the journal's revelations, the clay's origin, and the alley ambush. Wolfe's eyes narrowed, his fork pausing mid-bite. "Nadia Khalil," he mused. "A half-sister, scorned. Motive but opportunity? And the clay, Raoul's property, is no coincidence. Yet the dirk in Elena's hand. Too theatrical, Archie. A frame, perhaps." He leaned back, his chair groaning. "Arrange a dinner. Invite Raoul, Victor, Silas, and this Nadia, if you find her. Let them squirm under scrutiny." Finding Nadia wasn't easy. The Hell's Kitchen boarding house was a crumbling tenement, its hallways reeking of cabbage and desperation. The landlady, a chain-smoking crone named Mrs. Doyle, confirmed Nadia's stay but said she'd vanished yesterday. "Left a scarf behind. Fancy thing, silk with gold threads," she croaked. I bagged the scarf. It matched Eddie's description. And got a tip. Nadia had been seen at a Moroccan cafe, La Rose du Désert, near the docks. I headed there, dodging another shadow in the dusk. This one's smarter, melting into the crowd before I could close in. La Rose du Désert was a slice of Casablanca in New York. Low tables, brass lanterns, and the hum of oud music. A waitress pointed me to a back room where I found Nadia Khalil, unveiled now, her dark eyes fierce and wary. She was striking, with a scar on her cheek that spoke of hard years. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, her accent thick. "You're sniffing where you shouldn't." I played it cool, mentioning Elena's journal. Nadia's face hardened. She offered me stood out. Elena's journal mentioned a shipment arriving tonight, coded as desert bloom. Possibly the smuggled gold. I slipped out mid-dinner to call Saul, who was staking out the docks. Archie, he whispered. A crate just landed, marked Duval Imports. Guards are jumpy. Was this the key, or another distraction? Chapter 4. Red Herrings Unraveled. The New York night pressed against the brownstone's windows like a conspirator, heavy with heat and secrets. I, Archie Goodwin, had spent the day dodging shadows and digging up dirt. Nadia Khalil's hospital alibi, Elena Moreau's journal of wartime smuggling, and a desert bloom shipment that smelled of trouble. Nero Wolfe, my employer and the city's sharpest mind, sat in his office, a fortress of order amid the chaos, orchestrating the next move. Dinner was over. Fritz Brenner's duck à l'orange a fading memory, but the dining room still buzzed with tension. Our guests, Raoul Duval, Victor Lang, Silas Grant, and Nadia Khalil, had squirmed under Wolfe's probing, their masks slipping. A cut on Silas's hand had raised my hackles, and Saul Panzer's call about a guarded crate at the docks had lit a fuse. The game was afoot, and I was itching to play. Wolfe, in his yellow silk pajamas, leaned back in his chair, a bottle of beer glistening in the lamplight. "Archie," he rumbled. "Recount the evening. Omit nothing." I laid it out. Raoul's accusations of Victor's jealousy, Victor's jab at Raoul's smuggling, Silas's stammered denials, and Nadia's icy silence, her scarf a defiant flourish. The cut on Silas's glove, fresh, jagged, barely concealed, had drawn Wolfe's predatory gaze. A kitchen mishap, Silas had claimed, but his sweat told another story. Wolfe's eyes half closed, named Clara, confirmed Nadia's visit to her aunt from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. "Never left," Clara said, but her logbook showed a 30-minute gap when she'd stepped away. Enough time for Nadia to slip to the docks? I pressed Clara, who admitted seeing Nadia on the phone, speaking rapid French, her scar livid under the hospital's harsh lights. A crack in the alibi, thin but real. Next, I tailed Victor Lang to his apartment, a modest walk-up in Chelsea. He was out, but a nosy neighbor spilled Victor had been home by 10 p.m. the night of the murder, but left again around 11:30, limping toward the subway. His limp, I'd noticed, seemed inconsistent, heavy at dinner, lighter on the docks. I broke into his place, a skill Wolfe pretends to disapprove, and found a letter from Elena, dated a week ago. "Victor, stop asking about the gold. It's for justice, not greed." A photo showed him in uniform, 1944, no limp. Was he faking it? A red herring? Or a clue to a deeper game? Silas Grant was my last stop, his office a mahogany crypt in Midtown. The place was locked, but a Jimmy got me in. His desk held a typewriter with an uneven E, matching the threatening letters Elena had shown us. A file labeled Moreau Estate detailed missing funds, siphoned to an offshore account. Silas. Embezzling? A memo mentioned Desert Bloom as a final payment to a Moroccan contact. The cut on his hand, the typewriter, the file. They painted a picture, but it felt too neat, like a frame hung too perfectly. Back at the brownstone, past midnight, Wolfe was still up, a rare breach of his sleep schedule. Fritz had left a tray of coffee and eclairs, a midnight fuel. I reported, the sandalwood crate, Nadia's shaky alibi, Victor's fake limp, Silas's typewriter and files. Wolfe's fingers drummed, a sign of his brain at full throttle. "The dirk," he said, "is Casablanca. Elena wanted to give it away. I wanted my share." Her left hand gripped her glass tightly. Was she left-handed? I invited her to the brownstone, sensing Wolfe would crack her open like a walnut. As I left Le Mirage, that shadow was back, a figure in a dark coat, now joined by another. I led them on a chase through Hell's Kitchen's alleys, losing them in a maze of tenements, but not before a knife glinted in the moonlight, missing me by inches. Someone wanted me off the case, and they weren't subtle. Was it Raoul's goons, Silas's hired muscle, or Nadia's allies? Back home, Wolfe was in his office, a fresh coffee in hand. I added the chase to my report along with Nadia's left-handed grip. "Tomorrow," Wolfe said, "we end this charade. The crate, the suspects, the truth, all will converge." His tone was final, like a judge's gavel. Chapter 5. The Revelation in the Brownstone. The brownstone on West 35th Street stood like a fortress against the New York night, its windows glowing with the promise of answers. Inside the office was a stage set for judgment. Nero Wolfe, my employer, and the sharpest mind in detective work, sat enthroned in his custom chair, a bottle of beer untouched, his eyes gleaming with the predatory calm of a lion before the pounce. I, Archie Goodwin, had spent the last 24 hours dodging knives and digging through the muck of Elena Moreau's murder. The Moroccan dirk in her hand, the note screaming, "Port's curse," the red clay from Raoul's quarry, and the desert bloom crate that smelled of sandalwood and secrets. Tonight, Wolfe had summoned the suspects, Raoul Duval, Victor Lang, Silas Grant, and Nadia Khalil, for a reckoning. The air crackled with anticipation, thick as the scent of Fritz Brenner's coffee, still lingering from a late-night tray. The suspects filed in at 8 p.m., each a study in nerves. Raoul, his mustache twitching, adjusted his silk tie like a man facing a noose. Victor, facts, spoken with a weight that pinned everyone in place. I stood by the desk, notebook ready, watching their faces. Wolfe recounted the clues. The dirk etched with Berber symbols, likely from the Moreau family's collection. The note, typed on a machine with an uneven E. The red clay, traced to Raoul's upstate quarry. The desert bloom crate, heavy with what Saul Panzer confirmed was a coded tablet, not gold, inscribed with names of Vichy collaborators, a wartime relic Elena planned to expose. The killer, Wolfe said, knew of this tablet, its value to history and shame to the Moreau name. They killed to silence her. Raoul shifted, his smile forced. Preposterous. I was at a poker game. My men swore to it. Wolfe's lip curled. Your men, Mr. Duval, are as reliable as fog. The clay on the dock ties to your quarry, and the crate, marked by your company, holds the tablet. Explain. Raoul stammered, claiming ignorance of the shipment's contents, but his eyes darted to Silas. Victor spoke up, his voice rough. Elena wanted to give that fortune away. I argued with her, sure, but I loved her. I was home by midnight. I jumped in. Not quite, Victor. Neighbors saw you out at 11:30. And that limp of yours? No record of a war injury. His face flushed, but he insisted the limp was real, his late walk a drunken stumble, not murder. Nadia's voice cut through, sharp as the dirk. You all paint me as the villain, the abandoned sister. Yes, I wanted my share, but I was at Bellevue, not the docks. Her left hand, I noted, rested calmly on her scarf. Left-handed, like the killer's strike. But her hospital alibi, though shaky, held up under Saul's second check. Silas, sweating, adjusted his glasses. This is absurd. I managed the estate, nothing more. That cut? A letter opener slipped. Wolfe's eyes locked on him. Mr. Grant, your typewriter matches the threatening letters. Your files show embezzlement, funds siphoned to a Moroccan account, and the memo on Desert Bloom bears your initials, tracked from a quarry visit. Nadia's veiled woman role was a hired distraction, paid by Silas to muddy the trail. Nadia gasped, her scarf slipping. You used me? She hissed. Silas lunged for the door, but Kramer's men grabbed him, cuffs snapping like Justice's jaws. You're done, Grant, Kramer growled, his cigar ash falling like confetti. Victor sagged, relieved but broken. Raoul muttered about lawsuits, his empire intact but tarnished. Nadia stood, her scar blazing, and left without a word. Wolfe leaned back, finally sipping his beer. Satisfactory, he said, the word a full stop. I grinned, feeling the case's weight lift. Nice work, boss. Fritz's tort deserves a toast. Wolfe grunted, already eyeing the door to his orchids. As Kramer hauled Silas away, I typed the final report, the typewriter's clack of victory march. Elena's tablet would go to a museum, her justice served. But a shadow lingered. Nadia's silence, the knife in the alley. Was there another player, still in the dark? Type of 3. Chapter 6. The Shadow Beyond the Verdict. The brownstone on West 35th Street stood resolute against the New York dawn, its walls holding the echoes of last night's revelation. Nero Wolfe, the mastermind who'd cracked Elena Moreau's murder, was upstairs in his plant rooms, tending his orchids with a devotion that rivaled his pursuit of truth. I, Archie Goodwin, sat at my desk, the typewriter's keys cool under my fingers, the case file before me a neat stack of answers. Or so it seemed. Silas Grant was in cuffs, hauled off by Inspector Kramer for stabbing Elena at the East River docks, his motive a desperate bid to bury her discovery of a coded tablet naming Vichy collaborators. The Desert Bloom crate, the red clay from Raoul's quarry, the forged note, and Silas's cut hand had all pointed to him. Yet as I sipped Fritz Brenner's coffee, strong enough to wake a corpse, a nagging itch persisted. On heavy vellum, its ink fresh. The second shipment arrives Pier 19, October 10. Deliver to Le Faucon. No mistakes. No signature, but the handwriting matched the blackmail note from Elena's journal. Not Silas's, but someone else's. A new player? Pier 19 was near Raoul's warehouse, and Le Faucon, French for the falcon, rang a bell from wartime smuggling tales. I called Saul Panzer, who was still staking out the docks. Archie, he said, Pier 19's hot. Guards doubled. Crates marked Casablanca imports. Smells like trouble. Next, I tracked Nadia to La Rose du Désert, the Moroccan cafe where she'd been spotted. The place was quiet, its brass lanterns casting flickering shadows. Nadia sat at a corner table, her scarf loose, her scar stark under the light. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, her voice a low burn. "You're persistent. Silas killed Elena. What more do you want?" I showed her the letter. Her eyes flickered, but she shook her head. "I know nothing of Le Faucon. I told you I was at Bellevue when Elena died." Her left hand, I noted again, gripped her coffee cup tightly. Left-handed, like the killer's strike. But her alibi held, and her betrayal of Silas at the revelation suggested she wasn't the mastermind. Or was she? I pushed. "Nadia, you knew about the tablet. Did you know about a second shipment?" She hesitated, then admitted. "Elena mentioned another crate, hidden in Casablanca during the war. She wanted it found, not for money, but to right father's wrongs. I helped her contact a resistance friend, codenamed Le Faucon. A bombshell. Nadia, an ally?" But her pause felt like a half-truth. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was in his office, a tray of Fritz's brioche and jam before him. I laid out the letter, Saul's report, Casablanca imports. We cracked it open. No gold, but a leather case holding papers, letters in French naming Vichy officials and their American contacts, dated 1943. One name stood out. Henri Moreau, Elena's father, with a note. Delivered to Le Faucon, 1947. The crate's lock bore Raoul's company seal. As we hid the case, a figure lunged from the fog. The same dark-coated shadow from the alley, now wielding a knife. I dodged, landing a punch, and Saul tackled him. It was one of Raoul's dockhands, hired muscle, spilling, "Raoul paid me to stop you. He's meeting Le Faucon tonight." We dragged the thug to Kramer, who raided Pier 19. Raoul was caught red-handed, unloading another crate with a man in a hooded coat. Le Faucon, a Moroccan ex-resistance fighter named Omar Ben Ali. Omar confessed. He'd worked with Henri Moreau to smuggle evidence against Vichy traitors, hidden in the desert bloom crates. Elena had found the first tablet, planning to expose it. Raoul, fearing ruin to his family's name, had hired Silas to silence her, promising him a cut of the smuggled wealth. Silas did the killing, but Raoul was the puppeteer, using the dirk and note to frame a curse. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe faced Raoul, Omar, and Kramer. "Mr. Duval," Wolfe said, his voice a blade. "You orchestrated Elena's death to protect your empire. The tablet, the letters, they damn your father's legacy. Silas was your tool, the note your script." Raoul collapsed, confessing. "I couldn't let her destroy us. The Moreau name is all I have." Kramer cuffed him, his cigar glowing with grim satisfaction. Nadia, summoned again, wept quietly. "I helped Elena find Omar," she said. "I didn't know Raoul was behind it." Her scar seemed softer now, her rage spent. Victim note, the red clay from Raoul's quarry, and the coded tablet had pointed to Silas's hand and Raoul's mind. But the knife that grazed me in a Hell's Kitchen alley, Nadia Khalil's cryptic tears, and Omar Ben Ali's guarded gaze hinted at a shadow beyond the verdict. Was there a final player in this deadly game? It was 8 a.m., October 10th, 1947. The city waking with a restless hum. The phone jangled, and Inspector Kramer's gravelly voice cut through. "Goodwin, we found a safe deposit box in Silas's name. Papers linking to a Moroccan bank and a name, M. Lefebvre. Mean anything to Wolfe?" I relayed this to my boss, who sat like a Buddha in his yellow silk shirt, a rare second coffee replacing his usual beer. "Lefebvre," he mused, his fingers steepled. "French. Possibly an alias. The Vichy letters mentioned a contact in Casablanca. Perhaps this M. Lefebvre. Archie, retrieve the box's contents and summon Omar Ben Ali. His role as Le Faucon is not yet fully illuminated." I hit the streets, New York's pulse a mix of exhaust and ambition. The bank, a granite monolith in Midtown, yielded Silas's safe deposit box after Kramer's warrant. Inside were bank records, transfers of Moreau estate funds to a Casablanca account under M. Lefebvre, dated weeks before Elena's death. A photo slipped out. Elena, with a man in a fedora, his face half hidden, taken at a Moroccan cafe. The back read, "Casablanca, 1943. Trust Lefebvre." I called Saul Panzer, still on dock duty. "Archie," he said, "Omar's been spotted at Pier 19, meeting a woman. Veiled, like before. Could be Nadia, but she's taller, older. Another veiled woman?" The plot thickened like Fritz's bechamel. I tracked Omar to Le Mirage, the Moroccan club where Nadia had danced. He sat in a shadowed booth, his eyes haunted, his resistance scars visible in the dim light. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, his accent heavy, "you chase ghosts." I showed him the photo. His hand trembled. "Lefebvre, halls reeking of coal and despair." A neighbor pointed to a basement apartment, rented by a tall Moroccan woman, always veiled. I knocked and a woman answered. Late 50s. Elegant, despite her faded dress, her veil sheer but obscuring. "Madame Lefebvre?" I asked. Her eyes, sharp as a hawk's, narrowed. "You're Wolfe's man. Leave or regret it." I pressed, mentioning the photo. She stiffened, then fled through a back door. I gave chase, dodging crates in a cluttered alley, but she vanished into the subway's roar. A slip of paper fell from her coat. A dock pass for Pier 19, dated tonight. I returned to the brownstone where Wolfe had gathered Nadia, Victor, and Omar. The office was a pressure cooker, the air thick with suspicion. Nadia's scarf was tight, her scar vivid. Victor's limp seemed heavier, his eyes hollow. Omar fidgeted, his resistance pride fraying. Wolfe held the dock pass, his gaze piercing. "Madame Lefebvre," he said, "is the final veil. She is no widow, but a survivor of Henri Moreau's Vichy deals. Likely his mistress, Amina Lefebvre, who brokered the smuggled relics. She hired the alley thug to stop Archie, fearing exposure. Wolfe pieced it together. Amina, Henri's lover, had managed the Casablanca accounts, profiting from Vichy gold. Elena's plan to expose the tablet threatened her wealth and name. Amina manipulated Raoul, who used Silas to kill Elena. But when Silas was caught, Amina panicked, sending the thug to silence me. The second shipment, letters naming her as a collaborator, was her last secret. Omar, torn by loyalty to the resistance, had helped Elena, but feared Amina's reach. Nadia, unaware of Amina's role, had been a pawn, her veiled woman sightings staged to distract. Wolfe summoned Kramer, who raided Pier 19. Amina was caught unloading the case file of Elena Moreau's murder. Silas Grant, Raoul Duval, and Amina Lefebvre were in custody. Their conspiracy to silence Elena's exposé of Vichy collaborators via the Desert Bloom tablet and a second shipment of letters laid bare. The Moroccan dirk, the forged Port's curse note, the red clay from Raoul's quarry, and Amina's dock pass had sealed their fates. Yet a nagging splinter in my mind, the alley knife, Nadia Khalil's unspoken grief, and Omar Benali's haunted eyes suggested the story wasn't over. Was there a final veil to lift? The phone rang at 8:30 a.m., Inspector Kramer's voice a growl through the static. "Goodwin, we found a journal in Amina's apartment, coded in Berber script. Mentions a final guardian of the Moreau secrets. Wolfe better look at it." I relayed this to my boss, who leaned back, his chair creaking under his bulk. "Phooey," he muttered. "A guardian. The case grows tiresome, yet truth demands pursuit." Archie, retrieve the journal, and bring Omar Benali and Nadia Khalil. Their roles remain ambiguous. I hit the streets, the city's pulse a mix of fog and ambition. Kramer's precinct was a hive of chaos, cops shouting over typewriters. The journal, a slim leather volume, was locked in evidence. Its pages, deciphered by a linguistics expert, spoke of Henri Moreau's wartime network. A final guardian, tasked with protecting the Vichy letters if the tablet was exposed. The name was coded, L'Ombre, the Shadow. But a margin note hinted at a New York contact, someone close to the Moreau family. I pocketed a photocopy, my pulse quickening. Was L'Ombre the alley attacker? I tracked Omar to a Moroccan deli near the docks, its air thick with cumin and coffee. He sat hunched, his resistant scars stark in the morning light. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, his voice low. "You dig too deep." I showed him the journal's code. His eyes flickered. L'Ombre, a myth Henri created to scare enemies.
L'Ombre, Wolfe mused, his fingers drumming. A protector, not a killer. But the alley attack suggests desperation. Archie, check Victor Lang's war records. His limp, his past, may conceal the final piece. I called Saul Panzer, who dug into Victor's history. No war injury, but a stint in Casablanca, 1943, as a liaison for Allied intelligence. Victor, L'Ombre? I found Victor at his Chelsea walk-up, his face haggard, his limp heavy. "Archie, I'm done with this," he said, whiskey on his breath. I confronted him with the journal. His eyes widened. "L'Ombre? Henri gave me that name. I guarded his secrets, letters, not gold, to protect Elena. He admitted meeting Henri in Casablanca, tasked with hiding evidence of Vichy deals. When Elena planned to expose the tablet, Victor panicked, fearing his own wartime role would surface. "I didn't kill her," he swore. "But I hired the alley thug. To scare you off, not kill." His confession cracked, tears falling. Back home, Wolfe summoned Victor, Nadia, and Omar for a final gathering. The office was a crucible, tension thick as the scent of Fritz's espresso. Kramer stood by, his cigar a smoldering warning. Wolfe held the journal, his voice a thunderclap. "L'Ombre is no myth. Mr. Lang, you are the final guardian." Emphasis on guardian, delivered with finality. Wolfe unraveled it. Victor, as L'Ombre, had been Henri's American agent, hiding Vichy letters to shield the Moreau name. When Elena uncovered the tablet, she unknowingly threatened Victor's secret. His wartime complicity in Henri's deals. Victor didn't kill her, but hired the alley thug to stop my digging, fearing exposure.
Silas, manipulated by Raoul and Amina, did the killing, but Victor's silence enabled the plot. You betrayed Elena's trust, Wolfe said, if not her life. Victor sagged, confessing, I loved her, but I couldn't let the past destroy me. Kramer arrested Victor for obstruction, his cigar ash falling like a verdict. Nadia, her eyes wet, vowed to continue. Unease in my chest. The file on Elena Moreau's murder was thick. Silas Grant, Raoul Duval, and Amina Lefebvre were in custody. Their conspiracy to silence Elena's Vichy exposé, tied to the Desert Bloom tablet and a second shipment of letters, exposed by the Moroccan dirk, the forged Port's curse note, and the red clay from Raoul's quarry. Victor Lang, unmasked as L'Ombre, had guarded wartime secrets, hiring a thug to scare me off. Yet, Nadia Khalil's tearful resolve, Omar Ben Ali's heavy silence, and a faint echo of something undone kept the case alive. Was there one last lock to pick? At 9 a.m. the phone jangled, Inspector Kramer's voice a rasp of urgency. Goodwin, we found a coded telegram in Amina's belongings, sent from Casablanca, dated 2 days before Elena's death. Mentions a keeper of the flame. Wolfe better see this. I relayed it to my boss, who leaned back, his chair creaking softly. Pfui, he muttered, sipping coffee, a poor substitute for his beloved beer. A keeper. The case multiplies like roaches. Archie retrieved the telegram and summoned Nadia Khalil and Omar Ben Ali. Their truths remain incomplete. I hit the streets, New York's pulse a mix of fog and hustle. Kramer's precinct was a storm of activity, cops barking over ringing phones. The telegram, tucked in an evidence bag, was a single sheet, its Berber code partially cracked. To Keeper of the Flame, New York. Tablet exposed. Silence her. Casablanca awaits. No sender, but the postmark matched a Moroccan port office. A chill ran through me. Was this the alley attacker's order? I called Saul Panzer, still sniffing around the docks. Archie, he said, a dock worker mentioned a flame, a code name for a resistant safe house in Casablanca, run by a woman. Could be tied to Amina, but she's locked up. I tracked Nadia to a Brooklyn mission where she ladled soup for the poor. Her was in his office. A tray of Fritz's brioche and honey untouched. I laid out the telegram, Nadia's hint, and Omar's fear. Clara Voss, Wolfe mused, his fingers drumming. A maid, invisible yet omnipresent. Archie, find her, and check the telegram's code against the tablet's Berber script. I called Saul, who traced Clara to a boarding house in Hell's Kitchen, her last known address. The landlady, a sour woman named Mrs. Doyle, said Clara had vanished days ago, leaving a locked trunk. I cracked it open. Inside were letters from Henri Moreau, 1943, addressed to my flame, praising her for hiding Vichy evidence in New York. A photo showed a young Clara with Henri, her face serene but sharp. I found Clara at a Greenwich Village cafe, her plain dress a stark contrast to the bohemian crowd. Mr. Goodwin, she said, her voice soft but steely. You're too late. I showed her the telegram. Her hands trembled. I was Henri's eyes in America, she admitted. I hid the letters, kept his secrets. Elena's plan to expose them threatened everything. Henri's name, my loyalty. She hadn't killed Elena but had tipped Amina, hoping to scare her off. I sent the telegram, she confessed, to protect the past. The alley thug? Her cousin, a dock worker, acting on her panic. Back home, Wolfe gathered Nadia, Omar, and Clara in the office, Kramer looming with his cigar. The air was thick with finality. Wolfe held the telegram, his voice a low thunder. Miss Voss, you are the keeper of the flame. Emphasis on keeper delivered with weight. He unraveled it. Clara, Henri's confidant, had guarded the Vichy letters, believing they protected his legacy. When Elena planned to expose the tablet, Clara alerted Amina, who manipulated Raoul and Silas to kill. Clara's telegram sparked the murder, and her cousin's knife aimed to stop my digging. Final piece of the puzzle. A single letter, overlooked in the chaos of Elena Moreau's murder. I, Archie Goodwin, sat at my typewriter, the keys a steady pulse under my fingers, the case file thick with answers. Silas Grant, Raoul Duval, Amina Lefebvre, and Clara Voss were caged, their conspiracy to bury Elena's Vichy exposé tied to the Desert Bloom tablet and a second shipment of letters. Exposed by the Moroccan dirk, the forged note, the red clay, and a coded telegram. Victor Lang, L'Ombre, and Clara, the keeper of the flame, had guarded wartime secrets, but the alley knife, Nadia Khalil's quiet resolve, and Omar Ben Ali's burdened exit left a faint ripple. Was there one last lock to turn? At 10 a.m. the phone rang, Inspector Kramer's voice a gravelly prod. Goodwin, we found a letter in Clara's trunk, sealed, addressed to Elena, dated the day she died. It's in French, mentions a last sentinel. Wolfe needs to see it. I relayed this to my boss, who leaned back, his chair creaking softly. Phooey, he muttered, a coffee cup, a rare substitute for beer, cooling in his hand. A sentinel. The case persists like a stubborn weed. Archie, retrieve the letter, and summon Nadia Khalil and Omar Ben Ali. Their shadows still linger. I hit the streets, New York's pulse a mix of mist and purpose. Kramer's precinct was a storm of voices, cops sorting evidence like scavengers. The letter, sealed in wax with a Berber symbol, was in evidence lockup. Translated, it read, Elena, the last sentinel watches. The tablet's truth must stay buried. Meet me at the docks, midnight. C. Clara's initial, but her confession claimed she'd only tipped Amina, not met Elena. Was this a lie, or another hand? I called Saul Panzer, still haunting the docks. Archie, he said, a dock worker mentioned a sentinel, a code name for a Casablanca contact. Finding him, he said. I warned her to stop. His hands steadied. Relief or concealment? Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was in his office, a tray of Fritz's croissants and fig jam untouched. I laid out the letter, Nadia's hint, and Omar's caution. Paul Renaud, Wolfe mused, his fingers drumming. An accountant, privy to secrets, invisible yet essential. Archie, check his records, and compare the letter's Berber symbol to the tablet's code. I called Saul, who dug into Renaud, a French émigré, 50, with a Manhattan office and a wartime past in Casablanca as a financial liaison for Vichy deals. Suspiciously clean, but a bank record showed payments to Clara's cousin, the alley thug. I found Renault at his office, a sterile Swede overlooking Central Park. He was slim, bespectacled, with a voice like dry paper. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "this is pointless. I managed Elena's accounts, nothing more." I showed him the letter. His fingers twitched. Clara's work, not mine. But his desk held a Berber seal matching the letter's wax. I pressed. "You're the sentinel, Paul. You hid Henri's secrets." He bolted, but I grabbed him, pinning him against a filing cabinet. "All right," he gasped. "I protected the letters, for Henri, for France. Elena's exposé would ruin us all." He hadn't killed her, but had funded Clara's tip to Amina, sparking the murder. Back home, Wolfe gathered Nadia, Omar, and Renault, Kramer waiting with his cigar. The office was a crucible, tension thick as Fritz's espresso. Wolfe held the letter, his voice a low thunder. "Mr. Renault, you are the last sentinel." Emphasis on sentinel, delivered with finality. He unraveled it. Renault, Henri's financial shadow, had laundered Vichy funds, hiding the letters to protect his own role. When Elena uncovered the tablet, he panicked, paying Clara's cousin to scare me off and nudging her to alert Amina, who set the murder in motion. "You did not wield the dirk," Wolfe said, "but your gold